Greetings, our dear viewers, and welcome to our program by the Catholic Sisters in Zambia called Catholic Sisters Against Human Trafficking. And with me, the panelists, sisters from different congregations, and your presenter, my name is Sister Astrida Banda, a Dominican sister. You might be aware that there are about 27 million slaves in the world, and every 32nd human being is a victim of trafficking. Therefore, as sisters, we are committed to conducting advocacy around issues to do with human trafficking, because this is very key and dear to us as sisters. Therefore, before we proceed with our program, allow me to introduce to you our panelists, and I'll begin with my immediate left. Sister, please introduce yourself.
Hello, viewers. I am Sister Elvin Musumuko from the Franciscan Missionaries of the Divine Motherhood, usually known as Franciscan Sisters or FMDM. And I'm also from ZAS, the Zambian Association of Sisterhoods. I'm the Vice Chairperson.
Okay, thank you, Sister. Next, Sister, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. I am Sister Kayula Lesa. I'm a religious sister of charity. And on the Zambian Association of Sisterhoods, I serve as a coordinator for justice and peace.
Okay, thank you, Sister. Sister, please go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Greetings to you, all viewers. My name is Sister Sylvia Mlenga, Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary.
Thank you so much. You're all welcome to this program, sisters.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we would like our viewers to know that as you can see, we have different uniforms, meaning that we are a pool of sisters. It's already a system on its own of sisters who are trying to advocate for those who are less privileged in the society, the marginalized. And so before we begin, we would want to learn from you, Sister Elvin, what is ZAS?
Okay. So ZAS is the Zambian Association of Sisterhoods. So it's an umbrella body for all the women religious, Catholic women religious in Zambia. That is across all the dioceses. And ZAS has its offices here in Lusaka. We have 45 different religious congregations of Catholic women serving in the country, and I'm sure it's every corner of the country that's where we are situated. And as ZAS, we see our mission as being prophetic women at God's service. And so we see advocacy really as an aspect of our prophetic role as Catholic women religious, that advocacy is integral to our Christian vocation and as religious women.
Okay, thank you, Sister. And you know, sometimes I meet people and they tell me, how come you have a black veil? I met another sister with a white veil, and then I see with someone with a blue veil. How is that?
I think the uniform, the various uniforms really speak to the different charisms. Each congregation has a unique charism that's a gift of the Holy Spirit given to a particular congregation of sisters. And so you find that the habits, the colors have to do with the spirituality as well as the charism of a congregation and its ministry.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a sign in itself, a visible sign of who we are as consecrated women in the church.
Okay, no, that explains it. Therefore, that becomes relevant because we bring together these gifts, these signs of the Holy Spirit, and respond to the needs. So in this regard, speaking of advocacy, and specifically on human trafficking, would you like to elaborate more? What is human trafficking? Sister Kayo.
When we speak of human trafficking, first of all, maybe I would just like to look at the word traffic. To traffic is to trade. So when talk of human trafficking or trafficking in persons, it's trading people for exploitation. Now that is making it very, very simple. Otherwise, in its own definition, we look at three elements. If you say this is trafficking, so what are those elements? In the process of trafficking, you have what is done actually. So what is it that is done? An individual or groups of people are actually recruited. When they are recruited from their place of residence or wherever they may be found, they are also transported transferred sometimes, and also harbored. To harbor is to keep. They can be kept in a place in the process of trafficking, but also receipt of those very persons is part of what is done. Now, how is it done? Sometimes people are coerced, and most of the time, people are told there is a better life out there, and who doesn't want a better life? Everybody, and even ourselves, when you're talking about, as a church, when you're talking about promoting human dignity, we want people to have access to clean water, we want people to have access to, shelter, we want people to go to school. So anyone who comes and says, I can offer this particular service, or I can offer you a better life, people are inclined to believe. So that is how people are, trafficked. But the other process is, which is very, very important, I must emphasize, is exploitation, because that's the purpose. So you're looking at what is done, how it's done, and also the purpose. So the purpose is exploitation. Some victims are exploited in the sex industry, so all of a sudden you are made to be a prostitute. Not that you are willing. Even if it's a prostitute, someone has been working as a prostitute. If they are coerced to do prostitution, that is still trafficking. Also, domestic labor. Sometimes that, in private homes, that is not even seen, but a person has been trafficked. Organ removal, some people are trafficked for that purpose. And some people are also trafficked for bearing children that are going to be sold. So you could have a number of girls or women in a certain place, and they are forced to sleep with men so that they could get pregnant, that sort of thing. So they are men, and we also see people who are begging. We are forced to beg, but what we are doing is actually for the trafficker. So the trafficker is the one benefiting. So there are three elements. I want to again emphasize this. These three elements must be together and connected to say this is a case of trafficking. Okay. But that is what I've described is trafficking of an adult. But if we are talking about a child, for a child, we just look at what is done, meaning recruitment and the things that I went through. We don't look at the means, and I'm going to explain this by example. We just look at, the what is done and the purpose. So the means are not relevant in the case of a child. And I can give an example. A mother or a parent decides to give a child to a trafficker for them to go and beg. The child willingly actually accepts to do that, and then they are exploited. So even if they said they were willing to do that, it's still trafficking. So in that case of a child, however, that's in the Palermo Protocol, but in the Zambian law, that is not provided. I think it's one of the things that we are struggling to we're asking government to actually update the law so that we actually play to the standards, of international standards. So that is trafficking, and it happens everywhere. It happens in Africa, in Asia, in Europe. So everywhere, every country is actually affected by trafficking. And there are two. It occurs in two ways. So it can occur within the country, and that's what we call internal trafficking, or internal trafficking or in-country trafficking. But it can also occur across borders, and that's what we call cross-border trafficking. And usually when people speak about trafficking, they refer more to cross-border because people taken to South Africa, but they forget that it also happens internally.
Thank you, Sister Kayla. Well said. We are looking at the context of within our country. We're also looking at outside. Those people are trafficked outside the country. What are some of maybe the types that are found within our country, in our context in Zambia, which are kind of popular, and we can easily say, oh, I've seen this, and relate to it. Okay.
Okay. Official reports actually say that what is common in our country is internal trafficking. Okay. And unfortunately, that's the one that we don't even much focus on in terms of, addressing, because it's subtle in a way. Let me just give an example. We are talking about domestic servitude. So some people would argue, I get a maid, and the maid will get married tomorrow. So let me just go to the village and get this child within the family system and say, this person will come and work as, not work as, in my mind, I say this person is coming to work as a maid, but I tell my cousin or whoever to say that I'm going to take them to school. So that is traffic. But because it's happening within this private home, it's very difficult to detect. In the first place, we as Zambians, or maybe I can also generalize about Africa, we are used to placing children in homes. So it's not even something that is difficult to do, because I'll just go to the village and say, I want to take Mlenga, I want to take Tandiwe, I want to take this. And the parents who have won't even be thinking about it. Okay, this person is going to town. As long as they are going to, a family that is that they think they can benefit from. At least that's what they would think. So domestic servitude, but also sex trafficking. And some people have been working like, sex workers. When they are getting old and they don't have much market, then they will coerce these, the girls. But also in our context, forced marriage, child marriage, has been, recognized as trafficking. And then we hear from the reports that, the boys on the copper bed, for example, are used by the Jerabos to load copper. So there are all these things that are happening in our face, but maybe we don't just open our eyes to them.
Yeah. No, very true. Well said. I'm thinking as you are talking, I'm looking at when I was growing up, those my cousins who are coming from the village, helping at home, and I'm trying to imagine, were we actually trafficking them?
It's very possible.
Yeah, but I think we sent them to school, then eventually they got to go back to the village. And I think the issue of facilitating communication is also important. As much as we bring these young people or whoever they are to work for us or support us in our activities, we stay in touch with the family that has brought them. I've heard of people saying, like when they are brought to these homes, they are working, the family back home in the village will be communicating, trying to get hold of the person who has been sent to town. They'll be told, no, she's sleeping, she's busy, trying to cover up so that they don't actually understand the situation in which the person is in.
Right.
So, Sister Mlenga, would you want to add, who is more subjective to trafficking in Zambia? The victims,
the most victims in our country, they are young children and also women, especially, who are living in poverty. They are the most who are subjected to trafficking because they want to go and look for green pastures, because they are promised they are going to offer them education, they are going to offer them jobs. So mostly children and women, they are subjected. Even children, including boys and girls, they are all subjected to this human trafficking because they have no idea, they don't know what is the person trafficking them, what they are thinking. And because they want to get educated, they are focusing on education. They are not thinking of what the trafficker is thinking to do with them. So in our country, mostly, I'm sure you have seen in our streets, you see children begging. Most of those, if you ask them, you'll find that they are not on the streets on their own. There is somebody who is waiting when they collect the money to take that money to them. So mostly children, and it's very sad in our country because you see a lot of children in our streets and we think it's normal, but it's not normal because we are losing a lot of children, and most of them, in the way of trying to beg in the streets, you'll find that they are taken, and some of them, they'll kill them and take their organs for selling. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sister. Well said. I'm thinking I heard a sister in my community share to say when she was coming on Kafio roundabout, there was a child who was begging. So usually sister doesn't give money, so she gave them bananas. But then when she gave the bananas, the child never ate the bananas, but started running towards someone who was older. So there's this person receiving those bananas and whatever comes, the one who is the ringleader. So the benefit is going to this person, we are trying to, elaborate to say it's usually not the child who is trafficked who gets the benefit. There's always someone, like a system. What do you think is the impact of human trafficking?
Perhaps before we even go to the impact, I think it's also be important to highlight the point that among those that are potential victims, vulnerable migrants, we are talking about refugees, we are talking about stateless persons, we are talking about what we call asylum seekers. So sometimes when they are also within our country, also, especially as a vulnerable group, they can also be trafficked in that sense.
Yes. Because also the issue of language barrier, they cannot express themselves fully. So we don't hear their side of the story. Yeah. Sister, when you want to tell us the impact of human trafficking?
I think one of a more very serious impact is the impact on the person who's been trafficked. So be it a woman, a young person, a child, is that, you know, they are taken from their home environment, from their place, a place they know. Then they are put in a place of exploitation. They suffer various kinds of trauma, be it in sexual exploitation, that they are raped or they are beaten. The same with commercial labor, forced labor. So the major impact is really the trauma that a trafficked person suffers, and that trauma would be with them for the rest of their lives. That even when they are rescued or they manage to run away, that trauma is still with them. And it will affect the decisions they make, the choices they make. It affects issues of trust, because at times they are trafficked from, you know, people they know. It could be a person at church, it could be a relative. So then they lose trust in humanity. They lose trust in God, because where was God when this was happening? So that's a major impact on the person. You have the impact on the community, the family, because at times families are victims, but they are also at times they are perpetrators. So it breaks down those family bonds, because, you know, it's so and so, it's uncle so and so who did this. And then within society, to say, you know, what kind of community or society are we building if we are selling one another and exploiting one another? So that's part of the impact.
Yes, sister.
Yeah, and somewhat what accelerates the impact, as sisters described it, is the control mechanisms that the traffickers use. So if I'm a Zambian and they know that the Zambian speaks English, they might traffic me to a place where they don't speak English. For example, if it's within Africa, they will traffic me to Mozambique. And in that case, I'll be stranded because I don't have the language. Also, there's rates that if you ever say this, you know, as Africans, I think we believe so much in juju, so much in witchcraft. If a person says, I will bewitch you, that's it. So if a person were at the point of trafficking, sometimes they would actually tell you, get some blood and almost like make a covenant to say, if you run away, your parents will be dead, your sisters and brothers. So you think twice, even if you have a chance, because sometimes people would imagine that this trafficked person will be in this dark room and they are not coming out. Sometimes they actually go out, go alone. But because they have psychologically been made, you know, a zombie, if I may put it that way, they are not able to. But also they get their passports, you know, whatever traveling documents, if it's in the case of cross-border trafficking. So you won't know where to go, and they will threaten you. If at all you try to run away, we'll beat you, which they actually do. We'll beat you, we'll do ABCD to you. So, and sometimes traffickers, this is speaking from the victims themselves who would have been rescued. They'll say that sometimes they are good. They become, 24/7, they are not all bad. So this person who's really treating you badly, maybe this minute says, let me treat you with, this good meal. You begin thinking, oh, this is actually maybe a good person. You see what I mean? It's like person who's with gender-based violence, someone who's beating, they are not beating 24/7. They beat you today and they go and buy you a big car. And you say, well, after all, it's very good, or she is very good. So they go through much trauma, as sister said, and that is why, addressing addressing that, the psychic side of things is very important for those that are rescued.
Yeah, I know it's so much to take in as you speak. I'm getting goosebumps. Yeah, to think of the victims, like what they go through. Not only the victim themselves, but the families, society at large. Yeah, and I would also want to understand what are some of the challenges that you face, we face, the society faces in fighting human trafficking.
Yes, there are a lot of challenges that we face in advocating on human trafficking. The first one would be there is not much cooperation or collaboration between these other organizations who would want to work in fighting human trafficking because the chain is just too long. It's very difficult to identify who is a trafficker because everyone looks so innocent when you meet them, and you wouldn't know who is going to be in this human trafficking. So, which makes it even difficult to work or even to find out what is happening in our countries, because everything we see it to be okay, but we don't know what is happening. So one of the challenges that it's difficult to identify who is a trafficker or who is potential of being trafficked, because of course, like Sister was saying, you talk of your families, you trust them so much. You have all your trust, then at the end of the day, one of the family members betrays you and does what sells you to another person, which is a very bad thing to do. So another challenge would be in a way of understanding, as Sister was saying, the language which, for example, in our country we would have other people who have been trafficked and they are in this country, but we do not have the language like to advocate for them. Probably you even meet them and you see, what are these people doing in our country? You will see them, some of them, I'll give an example, you see the Chinese, they'll just greet you, or if they are selling something, they'll just sell you whatever they are selling. There's no communication to find out what they are going through, or even know that these maybe they have been trafficked in our countries, because we only think, no, they are here for work. So communication is one of the barriers that is really making it difficult for us to advocate, because we'll meet them and probably they want to tell you that, sister, me, I've been, this is what has happened, this is how I found myself in the country, but they won't communicate. And you also yourself, you just pass by, oh, anyway, they are here for something, they are here for business. That's what we think.
Yeah, so it's like a system, eh? It's a system. You won't know where the trafficking process has started from. Whether it's from the family, whether it's from the community, then at each stage there's someone who is conniving. So it's very difficult, like you were saying, to identify. What would you think would be the role of government in the whole process of fighting human trafficking?
I think the first thing I would talk about really is increase awareness to the public. I think our sisters who've been doing work in that regard, but you know, I think this is something that needs to be intensified. Look at the way COVID has been approached. Who doesn't know about COVID? Even a young person, why are you wearing a mask? Oh, COVID-19. I think it's that sort of thing where we need to actually have billboards. If it's maybe a sack of meat because everybody eats in Shima, I want to exaggerate that everybody eats in Shima. I want to believe so. Yes. So if stop trafficking, put messages there where people can get this message. Let's talk on radio, let's engage the chiefs. I know this is happening, but it's about intensifying so that everybody who comes to Zambia will say, hey, Zambia is really aggressive in terms of fighting trafficking, because they'll say, stop human trafficking, end human trafficking, do this and that. Because that's really what will help. Look at the way it was approached. I think human trafficking, looking at the impact that we've talked about and the fact that it's so hidden, needs to be approached. I totally believe that when people have information, they will think twice about taking those opportunities they think are going to improve their lives. So when people know, I think that's almost half the battle done. So we do need to do that. Very, very much. Government needs to intensify, and of course working collaboratively with us.
Okay. Yeah, then just to thank also government for what they are doing. You already talked about the provision in the legislation that we are already doing something as Zambia to say this is part of the policy, and we are committed to seeing that we improve the standards within the country. But of course there's always something that can be done and strengthened. Sister Evan, would you like to add to that?
I was going to really just emphasize on the awareness and having to be able to spot and name human trafficking for what it is. Because at times we are calling it different things, and then we don't then tackle it because it's known by different forms. But that the more we can talk about it and hear it said left, right and center, you know, have songs made about it. The same way we've had songs made about COVID. We've got, you know, that human trafficking in its own way is a pandemic. It's $1 billion business across the world. So it is a pandemic. It is a crime against humanity. And we are not saying that enough, that it is a crime against humanity. It is, so it's that in terms of, like Sister is saying, when we intensify awareness, also the ways to spot it, the way to know actually I'm a potential perpetrator, a potential trafficker, like we are saying, just by moving relatives from one place to the other for domestic servitude, to talk to young people. I think that, you know, young people are, like if you look at social media and the various offers, job offers, scholarships and things like that, to say how do we have a system that can monitor these agencies that are advertising for jobs somewhere. When people arrive there, they find themselves either as forced labor or as sexual workers. So how do we, I think it would take all of us to really be able to screen these employment agencies, recruitment agencies, agencies offering scholarships to go and study in all kinds of places. But also we need the survivors to tell their story. Because people have maybe, you know, availed of these scholarships and have ended up in terrible situations, that when they come back, a forum is provided where they can share their experience and say, please be alert, be aware. Not all these are what they are actually saying they are. And those jobs, those scholarships probably don't exist at the other end. So it would really be, how do we involve survivors so that they become part of the advocates, to be able to share their story. To say it is real, it's happening, it has happened to me. Because when we talk and it hasn't happened to me, it's like, are you sure?
Yeah, it's like a story.
Yeah, but for someone who's really been through that, it carries a lot of weight.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well said. You know, I'm thinking as you are sharing, like, what are some of the things maybe we can highlight as sisters that we've done in the fight against human trafficking? You know, some of the advocacy activities that we have engaged in. Like maybe as we go now, summing up our program so that our viewers can also learn the commitment that we have and towards this year.
Maybe before we go to that, I would actually like to point out one thing that government should also do.
Okay.
That is, you know, emphasizing skills training.
Okay.
Because sometimes, and also the mind, working on our mind as well, because our education is so much about memorizing for passing. So Mosheshi was born in whatever, and I just reproduce, you know, without helping us to think critically. So if I finish at university, there is no employment, how can I actually use what I learned at university to generate employment for myself? I think that also needs to be emphasized. We need to reschool in that sense. But coming to what we are doing as sisters, one of the things that we should continue is what we are saying about raising awareness. I think in our schools, I can give an example of Roma girls. We have children with T-shirts every Friday. It's written "Stop Human Trafficking." So if it's in the face of the people all the time, I think that should be we should continue doing that. But also speaking, offering our places for survivors too, because the places of safety, government has constructed some, but they haven't been enough, especially for men and boys. Because if you are a man or a boy, and if you are rescued in Zambia, you are very unfortunate, because one thing that will happen is that you go to correctional centers or previously called prisons. So you are a victim alongside your trafficker, and then the prison conditions are not, after that trauma, you don't want to be in a place like a prison. So we can work with government to try and provide that the safe places for the people.
Okay. Great. So we are committing to say we are ready to support government's effort to ensure that we also have these forms for the victims.
Definitely.
Thank you. That's well said. Anything else, Devin? Sister Sylvia?
Probably just to encourage our youths that they should always on the watch. Of course, we all want to be working, we want to be somebody in society. So we need to be on the watch. Who is offering us a job? Whom do we know to the country where we are going? At least if we hear, okay, somebody is offering me a job, you try to tell somebody, this is what I've been offered in this country. Do you know anything about this? Probably we try to tell some people who are elder than us, so that probably they have more experience, maybe they have been in that country and they know the situations, then they'll be able to encourage us on what to do. Not we just hear, then we go and process papers. Probably sometimes even our parents won't know. We won't tell them the time we are leaving, and no, me, I'll be leaving to Canada. Canada, what do you know from Canada? And we just got all things from social media. So we have to be careful and we have to be aware every time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sister Sylvia. Selvin?
It's just, I think, about the care, the pastoral care of survivors and victims. And I think as women religious, that's something we are committed to, and would want to be able to partner with all kinds of groups that are looking after victims and survivors. And the importance of them receiving either counseling services, because we did talk about the trauma that people undergo, that it's not just giving them a roof over their heads, but that someone needs to actually offer counseling services, or just for healing for themselves, and to regain confidence in themselves that they are no longer an object, that was sold, but that I am a human being, created in the image and likeness of God, and I have dignity. And that would also, again, take the church, it would take sciences like the social sciences to actually be able to journey with this person, that they can once again take their place in society.
Well
Thank
said,
you.
sisters. No, thank you very much. This has been very interactive session. And I just want also to say that as sisters, I see that we are making commitments to train more and more sisters among ourselves in issues to do with trafficking and advocacy. We have more sisters who are training as social workers and counselors. Like you are saying, if we offer our facilities for safe homes, it means that we need to have the skills to kind of provide what is necessary for these victims. And I think we are very committed as sisters. So I would like to thank you, each one of you, for coming to this program, for sharing your knowledge. And I know that the viewers have heard for themselves what has been discussed and shared today. And we look forward to interact more with you in our next program as we continue fighting the scourge of human trafficking as Catholic sisters. We want to offer our special thanks to Zambian Association of Sisterhoods for providing us with this opportunity. And we also want to offer our special thanks to our special network who brought us together for a training specific for advocacy. And this is Africa Faith and Justice Network. So until next time, stay blessed.